If you ever find yourself driving across the back roads of Iowa at dusk, you might notice a little sign by the highway. It's rusted now, half bent from wind and time, but you can still make out the faded words if you squint. Welcome to Hollow Creek, where harvest is life. Most folks never turn off to see what's left of that place. And maybe that's for the best. Because if they stopped, if they walked the quiet streets and let the silence settle in, they might feel it too, that strange heaviness in the air, like the earth itself is holding its breath. But before all of that, before the silence and the empty houses and the things buried beneath the fields, Hollow Creek used to be alive, and I used to be alive with it. My name is Ethan Merrill, and if you had met me 20 years ago, you would have said I was the kind of man carved straight out of Midwestern soil. Stubborn hands, a work-worn back, and a heart tied to the land like a second spine. My family farm sat on the western edge of town, a stretch of corn and soy that had been passed down from Merrill to Merrill for 3 generations. My daddy always said the land knows the truth about a man. It pays you what you earn, he liked to tell me, and it punishes what you hide. Back then, I believed him. Back then, I believed a lot of things. Hollow Creek wasn't big, but we had something no other town in the county had, the annual Fall Harvest Festival. People drove in from all over the state to see it. The craft booths, the caramel apples, the old white chapel strung with orange lights, and of course, the giant pumpkin weigh-in. It wasn't just an event, it was our pride, our identity. And for 5 damn years straight, I stood on that wooden platform and watched Caleb Dorsey, loud-mouthed, big smiling, overconfident Caleb, with his spotless boots and perfect rows of crops, haul in the winning pumpkin like he owned the whole town. Folks cheered for him. Kids took pictures next to his prize pumpkin. Reporters called him the king of the Midwestern harvest. And me? I took home second place every single time. Second place. You'd be surprised how humiliating those 2 words can feel when a man has put everything into the soil. But the part that hurt most wasn't losing. It was the look Caleb gave me each year after the judges pinned that blue ribbon onto his pumpkin. A casual little smile, a pat on the shoulder, and that same line he always said, "Maybe next year, Ethan. Don't give up now." Like I was some kind of rookie, like my father and grandfather hadn't bled into this land long before he was even born. So when the bank letters started coming in, the warnings, the overdue notices, and when the crops started thinning despite all my work, I told myself this year had to be different. Not just for pride, not just for the damn ribbon, but for survival. My wife, Sarah, she tried to be gentle about it. She always was. "Ethan," she'd say, brushing soil from my shirt after a long day, "it's okay not to win. We'll make it through." But she didn't understand. Or maybe she understood too well. There's something dangerous about a man who starts to believe he has nothing left to lose. That was the year I decided I wouldn't let Caleb beat me again. That was the year I walked into the Kansas Agricultural Fair and met the man who changed everything, Jonas Whitlock. And if I had known what would grow from the seeds he handed me, if I had known what Hollow Creek would become, maybe I would have walked away. Maybe I would have saved us all. But I didn't. I took those seeds home, and the land took everything else. If you want to hear the rest, the truth no one else lived long enough to tell, stick around, make sure you're subscribed, and let's go a little deeper into Hollow Creek. The harvest is just beginning. Most people think the worst decisions in life come with warning signs. A bad feeling in the gut, a whisper telling you to turn around, something. But that's the thing about real trouble. When it shows up at your door, it doesn't look like danger at all. Sometimes it looks like a friendly smile, or an old man at a county fair handing you a packet of seeds. I still remember the smell of fried dough and hay when I walked into the Kansas Agricultural Expo that year. I didn't plan on buying anything. Hell, I barely had gas money to make the drive. But when a man is desperate, he'll go looking for hope in places that never mattered before. Maybe that's what led me to the back corner of the fairgrounds, past the bright tents and shiny tractors, to a forgotten little booth draped in dusty burlap. And that's where I first saw him, Jonas Whitlock. Jonas didn't look like a salesman. He looked like a story someone forgot to finish writing. Thin, stiff posture, sunken blue eyes that had seen too many seasons, and hands darkened by soil that wasn't from around here. "Looking for something special, son?" he asked me, even though I hadn't said a word. I told him I wasn't buying, just browsing. He chuckled, that low, raspy chuckle that didn't match the frailness in his arms. "Funny thing," he said. "Most folks don't find their way to my booth unless they're searching for something they've already lost." That stopped me, because in that moment, I felt like he could see right through me, through the debt notices in the truck, through the years of losing to Caleb Dorsey, through the fear of watching my family farm collapse on my watch. And maybe he did see all that. Maybe he'd seen it in others before me. He reached beneath the table and set down a small cloth pouch tied with a faded red cord. Inside were seeds unlike any I'd ever seen. Dark, almost black, with tiny red veins running across the surface like dried rivers. "Crimson Gourd," Jonas said softly. "Old lineage. Older than Iowa. Older than this country. They grow big. Bigger than anything you've seen." His eyes locked onto mine. "If you feed them right." I should have walked away. I should have laughed and told him I wasn't interested in ghost stories dressed up as farming tips. But something in his voice, or maybe something in my own heart, made me stay. Desperation has a flavor, and if you've ever tasted it, you know how it clings to your tongue. Folks watching this right now, let me ask you something. Have you ever wanted something so badly that the line between right and wrong got blurry? Have you ever felt that tight pull in your chest when you know you're about to make a choice you can't take back? Because that's exactly what I felt standing there with that old man. Jonas didn't sell the seeds. He just pushed them across the table. "These aren't bought," he said. They're inherited, passed on to the one who needs them most. I asked him what he meant. He didn't answer. Instead, he leaned in close enough for me to smell the earth on his skin and whispered, "Greatness requires giving, and the soil knows the difference between a hard worker and a coward." I don't know why that hit me the way it did. Maybe because for the first time in years, someone wasn't laughing at my efforts. Someone believed I could win. Or maybe he wasn't talking to me at all. Maybe he was talking to the part of me that had been starving for a chance to rise again. I took the pouch. My hands shook when I did. Jonas nodded slowly, like he'd been waiting for that moment all along. "Remember," he said, "these seeds don't grow on water and sunshine alone. Something must be sacrificed. Something always is." I wanted to ask him more. What kind of sacrifice? What he meant? Why me? But when I blinked, he was already turning away, blending into the crowd as if he had never been there. I looked down at the seeds, heavy in my palm, and for the first time in months, I felt something that felt like hope. Sharp, dangerous, alive. I didn't know it then, but the moment I accepted those seeds was the moment Hollow Creek's fate was sealed, and mine with it. If you're still here listening, tell me, would you have taken those seeds? Would you have walked away? I wonder that every night. And if you want to hear how everything began to unravel once I planted them, make sure you're subscribed, because the next part is where things start to grow in ways nothing human ever should. They say the earth remembers everything you bury in it. Lies, regrets, hope, even sins. I never believed that until the night I planted Jonas Whitlock's seeds. Funny thing is, nothing about that night felt dangerous. It felt quiet, ordinary. And looking back, that's what scares me most. Evil shouldn't feel ordinary, but it always starts that way. Always. The moon was low, hanging over Hollow Creek like a dull silver coin when I knelt in the east field. That part of the farm had always grown the strongest crops. My dad used to say the soil there had good bones. I didn't think much about it then. I just wanted a win. One damn win. And those seeds in my palm felt like a last chance at saving my family's future. When I cut open the little cloth pouch Jonas gave me, I swear the wind stopped for a moment. Not died down, stopped. Like the whole field was holding its breath. The seeds inside looked almost the same as earlier. Dark, heavy, veined with that strange crimson threading. But under the moonlight, they seemed to pulse. Just once. Like a heartbeat. I told myself it was the lighting, nerves, anything normal, anything human. I dug 5 shallow holes, spaced the way my father taught me. My hands moved on their own. Habit, ritual. If you've ever worked a farm, you know that planting isn't just a task. It's a memory, a tradition. It connects you to every generation before you. But that night, when my fingers touched that soil, I felt a coldness that didn't belong. Not temperature cold, but something deeper, like touching a stone that had never seen the sun. When the seeds dropped into the ground, the earth seemed to swallow them too quickly. The dirt fell in smooth, soft, unnatural folds, almost eager. I remember pulling my hands back slowly, staring at the patch like it might move again. And then, nothing. No glow, no noise. Just a field and a tired man kneeling under the moon. But the moment I stood, something sharp grazed my palm. A stray thorn or broken stem, I thought. A thin scratch, barely more than a paper cut. A single drop of blood fell onto the soil before I could wipe it away. One tiny drop. And that's when the ground trembled. Not an earthquake, not wind, more like the dirt settling beneath my boots, shifting, stretching, almost sighing. I told myself it was exhaustion, that I'd been working too hard, that sleep was catching up to me. But deep down, a part of me recognized that sound, the same way you recognize trouble in a man's voice even when he's smiling at you. Something in that soil woke up, something hungry. The next morning, I walked out early, half expecting nothing, half dreading everything. And there they were, 5 tiny sprouts pushing through the dirt, red-tinted vines glistening with a dew I didn't recognize. Dew shouldn't be that color. Dew shouldn't smell metallic. But the thing that chilled me wasn't the sprouts. It was how fast they'd grown overnight. They shouldn't have been there yet. Not that soon. Not that size. Every farmer in Iowa knows pumpkin seeds take their sweet time. But these weren't waiting. These were rushing towards something, toward being. By noon, the smallest sprout had spread leaves shaped almost like hands, curled, reaching, trembling every time my shadow passed over them. I bent down close, brushing dirt from one leaf, and the moment my skin touched it, the vine reacted. Just a twitch, a little shiver, like it sensed me, or recognized me. Have you ever felt watched by something that isn't supposed to be alive in that way? It crawls down your spine, slow, like ice melting under your shirt. I stood up fast, told myself I was imagining things, told myself this was just stress playing tricks. That's what we all do when the world doesn't fit the rules we know. We reach for the excuses that feel safest. But by sunset, those excuses ran out. The sprouts had doubled, then tripled, and the smallest one, the one that had touched my blood, already had a bud forming at the center. That's not how pumpkins grow. That's not how anything grows. I remember leaning on the fence that evening, staring at that patch of earth, and for the first time in my life, I felt the farm looking back at me. Sarah walked out with lemonade, asked why I looked so shaken. I told her nothing. That was the first lie. Not the worst, but the first. Folks listening right now, let me ask you something. If you planted something and it grew overnight, faster than any plant should, would you be scared? Or would you feel chosen? Because I'll be honest, both feelings hit me at once. And that's how it gets you. Not with terror, with wonder. If you're still here, still holding on to this story, like I held on to those seeds, make sure you're subscribed. You won't want to miss what those vines became and what they demanded next. The real horror was only beginning to sprout. People like to say every nightmare has a beginning, some clear moment where everything changes. But the truth is, sometimes that moment sneaks up on you so quietly, You don't even realize you've crossed a line until you're standing on the wrong side of it. For me, that line was drawn the day the vines tasted blood for the first time. It was late August, the sun low and thick in the sky, turning Hollow Creek gold the way only harvest season can. I'd been spending more time in the east field than I cared to admit. Sarah said I was getting obsessed, and maybe she was right, but I couldn't stay away. The sprouts had grown fast, too fast, stretching into twisted red vines that curled like veins across the soil. The largest one had already formed a round, swollen bud, heavy, pulsing, alive. I told myself it was just a strange seed variety, rare, maybe, foreign, but deep down, I knew better. The land was different around those vines. The soil looked richer, darker, almost bruised. Even the air felt thicker, heavy with something I didn't have a name for. That evening, while checking the bud, the one I'd started calling the Crimson Gourd, I crouched down to clear away a few dead leaves. It was innocent enough, routine. And then my hand slipped. A rusted piece of fencing wire hiding under the soil scraped the side of my index finger, deep enough to make me suck in a breath. The pain wasn't much, but the blood came fast. A single red line trailing down my palm, gathering into a thick drop that rolled off my wrist and fell onto the ground beside the vine. I didn't even think about it. I just shook my hand and reached for my bandana. Then the ground moved. Just a tremor, a little shift, but enough to make the hair stand up on the back of my neck. I froze, watching, listening. The vine closest to the blood shivered, like an animal breathing in for the first time. Slowly, like it had been asleep for years and just now noticed the scent of something warm, something living. Before I could pull back, one thin tendril lifted from the soil. Not grew, lifted, as if it already had muscles beneath the skin. It touched the wet patch on the dirt, curling delicately through the blood-soaked soil, drinking it up grain by grain, until there was no trace left. The earth looked clean again, too clean. And then I heard it, a faint, whispery sound, like wind moving through dry corn stalks. But there was no wind, not a breath of it. The whole field was still as a photograph. The whispering wasn't around me, it was beneath me, coming from the vine, growing. I staggered back, clutching my bleeding hand against my shirt. My heart hammered so hard I could feel it in my teeth. I told myself I imagined it, that I was tired, stressed, anything. But then the bud, the Crimson Gourd, gave a low, wet groan, stretching visibly, swelling until the skin tightened like an overfilled balloon. I knew crops didn't grow like that. Nothing grows like that. I should have run. I should have called Sarah, told her everything, dug those vines out of the ground with my bare hands if I had to. But instead, I just stood there, hypnotized, horrified, and somehow proud. The same ugly pride that had been crawling inside my ribs since Caleb Dorsey stole that blue ribbon year after year. Maybe that's what the vine was really drinking that day. Not blood, but desperation. A farmer's hunger to win. By the time I wrapped my hand and walked back to the house, the Crimson Gourd had grown nearly 3 inches in a single damn evening, all from one drop of blood. And as much as I hate admitting it, a part of me stayed up that night wondering how much bigger it could grow if it had more. That was the moment the field stopped belonging to me. That was the moment the land chose sides, and it didn't choose mine. If you're still here, keep listening. The first drop of blood was nothing. What came next? That's where the real horror began. Wouldn't want you to miss it. You'd think a man would learn his lesson after watching a plant drink his blood. You'd think fear would snap him awake, make him turn back, make him bury the whole thing under 10 feet of dirt. But fear is a strange thing. Sometimes it freezes you. Sometimes it blinds you. And sometimes it whispers that maybe you misread the danger. Maybe it isn't a threat. Maybe it's an opportunity. That's the lie I told myself the week the Crimson Gourd began to truly awaken. I noticed the first real change 3 days after the blood incident. The gourd, once just a heavy bud, had swollen into something the size of a small barrel. Its skin wasn't smooth like normal pumpkins. It had ridges, deep and twisting, almost like muscle fibers beneath it. And the color, Lord, the color was wrong. Not orange, not even red, but some pulsing mix of the two, like a bruise trying to heal and rot at the same time. Every morning I'd walk out to that field, and every morning the air felt thicker, warmer, as if the soil was exhaling slow, humid breaths. The vines no longer lay flat, they crawled. Thin tendrils lifted and curled upward like fingers stretching after a long sleep. I kept telling myself it was just a rare species, some experimental hybrid, something Jonas Whitlock probably couldn't explain with plain words. But I felt the truth in my bones long before I admitted it out loud. And maybe you felt a moment like that too. Something's wrong, terribly wrong. But a part of you whispers, don't stop, not yet, just a little further. Let me ask you, if you were in my place, deep in debt, desperate to win, clinging to the last scrap of pride, would you have walked away? Or would you have let hope blind you a little longer? Tell me in the comments, because I think about that question more than I want to. On the 5th morning, something new happened. I woke to a noise, low, rhythmic, almost like a heartbeat echoing through the walls. At first, I thought it was coming from the barn, but when I stepped outside, barefoot on the cool porch boards, I realized the sound wasn't coming from any building. It was coming from the earth itself, from the east field. My legs carried me there before my mind had time to object. The sun hadn't fully risen yet, and the field glowed a strange twilight blue. The vines glistened with a sticky dew unlike anything I'd seen. Thicker, darker, almost syrup-like. And the gourd wasn't just bigger. It was moving, breathing. Each inhale made the ridges expand. Each exhale made them contract. Slow, heavy, audible. And standing there, I swear I felt the field watching me, waiting, the way a dog waits for command, or a predator waits for permission. That was when the ground trembled, softly at first, then harder. Dirt shifted around my boots like something beneath it was stretching upward, testing its strength. I stumbled back, heart pounding so hard it made my vision shake. Fear finally woke up inside me. Real fear, not the quiet, nagging kind. The kind that grabs you by the throat and tells you you've made a terrible mistake. But then, something stopped me from running. A voice. Not a whisper, not words, but a pull in my mind, like a thought that wasn't mine settling into place. More. Just that. One word. A hunger dressed up as a request. I shook my head, backing away. No, I'm imagining things. I haven't slept. I'm stressed. But the gourd made a sound. Wet, creaking, like bark splitting on a frozen night. The vines stirred, lifting slightly, turning toward me. It knew me. It recognized me. And I felt something sickening deep in my chest. It needed me. Now here's something I want to say directly to you, the one listening right now. Have you ever felt needed by something wrong? Something you shouldn't want? Something that should scare you away, but instead pulls you closer? If you felt it, you know exactly the trap I fell into. Because being needed, even by something monstrous, is a powerful thing. That afternoon, Sarah found me sitting in the kitchen, staring at my bandaged hand. She asked if I felt feverish, if I needed rest, if the farm work was wearing me thin again. I lied. I told her everything was fine, that the crops were looking promising this year, that the east field was thriving. She smiled, tired but hopeful. She believed me because she trusted me. And that was the moment I realized the danger wasn't just in the field. It was in me. The secrecy, the obsession, the strange yearning to go back out there and feed it. As night fell, I found myself drawn out again, not willingly, more like sleepwalking with my eyes open. The moon hung low, pale and watchful, as I stepped barefoot onto the cold grass. I didn't bring a lantern. I didn't need one. The gourd glowed faintly from within, veins pulsing like embers under skin. When I reached it, the air vibrated, soft, rhythmic, like a purr from something too big to be tamed. I lifted my hand. I didn't mean to, but I lifted it. The bandage slipped. A scab cracked. One small drop of blood fell onto the vine, and the earth lurched. The vines surged upward, tightening, shivering with pleasure. The gourd swelled visibly, skin rippling as if something inside pressed outward. Then I heard it again, clearer this time. More. Not a voice, but a demand, a need, a promise. The ground shook so violently I stumbled backward. The vines relaxed, sinking slowly into the soil, their hunger momentarily satisfied. I gasped, clutching my chest, trying to convince myself I hadn't just fed something that should never have been born. but deep down, I knew. That night wasn't the awakening of the gourd. It was the awakening of something inside me, something that had slept for a long, long time. Ambition, maybe? Pride? Desperation. That's how creatures like this take you. Not by force, by offering you the thing you want most. And I was foolish enough to accept. If you're still here, if the story's gotten under your skin even a little, leave me a comment. Tell me what you think woke first, the gourd or the man tending it. And stay close, because the next piece of this story, that's where the real nightmare begins. I didn't sleep the night the gourd asked for more. Not really. I just lay there staring at the ceiling, feeling the weight of something I couldn't explain pressing down on my chest. The house was quiet, Sarah breathing softly beside me, the old wooden beams settling in the cool Iowa air. But the silence didn't comfort me. It felt like a warning, like the whole world was holding still, waiting for something to happen. And deep down, I think I already knew who the next chapter of this nightmare would swallow. Because the very next morning, Caleb Dorsey showed up at my door. It's funny how predictable some men can be. You start growing a pumpkin 3 times bigger than anything the county's ever seen, and the man who's beaten you 5 years in a row will smell your success before he ever sees it. Pride has a scent. Envy has one too. And Caleb carried both like cheap aftershave. I saw his truck rolling up the gravel drive before he even parked. That spotless red Chevy of his, washed so clean you could see the whole damn sky in the reflection, slowed to a stop by the barn, and out stepped Caleb with that same smug smile he always wore around harvest season. "Mornin', Ethan," he called, tipping his hat like we're old friends. "Heard you've been working on something special this year." My stomach twisted, not because he was here, but because part of me sensed, no, felt, the Crimson Gourd stir the moment he arrived, like a beast waking up to the scent of prey. I waved stiffly, trying to seem normal. "Just tending the crops," I lied. "Same as every year." Caleb grinned in that friendly but not friendly way of his. "You mind if I take a look around? Folks in town are talking, saying you've got a gourd that might actually give me some competition." I didn't want him anywhere near that field. Not because I feared he'd sabotage my work, but because I feared what my work would do to him. Still, what was I supposed to say? "No, Caleb, you can't look because the pumpkin I planted might eat you?" So I shrugged. "It's just a pumpkin, Caleb. But sure, go ahead." As he started walking toward the east field, I felt something cold trickle down my spine. The same sense you get when you watch a man step on cracking ice and he doesn't hear it yet. I followed him, slowly, reluctantly, my boots heavy like they were filled with wet concrete. Caleb talked the whole way, bragging about his irrigation system, his fertilizer, how this year's festival was going to be the biggest yet. I barely heard him, because the closer we got to the Crimson Gourd, the stronger that low vibration in the ground grew. A pulse, a hunger. When we reached the fence line, Caleb stopped mid-sentence. His breath hitched. "Lord Almighty," he whispered. The Crimson Gourd towered like a living monument, veins glowing faintly under the morning sun, vines coiled around its base like sleeping serpents. It was nearly 9 feet tall, swollen, breathing. Caleb stepped forward before I could stop him, leaning in with wide eyes like a parishioner staring at a miracle. "Ethan, what the hell did you feed this thing?" My voice cracked. Just soil, water, time." Caleb snorted. "Bullshit." He circled the gourd, reaching out like he wanted to touch it. I grabbed his arm before he could. "I wouldn't." But he pulled free, annoyed. "Relax, Merrill. It's just a pumpkin." Just a pumpkin. If only he'd been right. He crouched down, inspecting the vines. And that's when he noticed the soil. Darker, wetter, stained with something that wasn't mud. He rubbed a bit between his fingers, frowning. "This looks like..." The vine moved. Fast. Too fast. A tendril snapped upward, latching onto his wrist with a strength that made him shout. He stumbled back, yanking, cursing, but the vine tightened, coiling like a rope soaked in muscle. "Ethan, what the... Help me! Get it off!" I should have moved. I should have grabbed him, hacked the vine, done something. But I froze. Not out of shock. Out of recognition. The gourd didn't want me to interfere. I felt it, deep in my bones, an invisible hand gripping my chest, holding me still, as if the field itself whispered, "Stand back. This one is mine." Caleb thrashed, kicking at the soil as the vine dragged him closer. The ground beneath him shivered, cracking open in thin, jagged lines. He screamed my name again, fear raw in his throat. "Ethan, help me!" And here's the part I struggle to admit. A small part of me didn't want to. A small part of me, the part beaten by him year after year, watched with a cold, guilty satisfaction as his confidence crumbled, replaced with terror. But the bigger part, the human part, finally broke free of whatever held me. I lunged forward. Too late. The ground beneath Caleb split open like a mouth tearing through skin. A second vine shot upward, coiling around his leg. He gasped, choking on his own breath, as the earth swallowed his calf, then his knee, then his thigh. "Ethan! Ethan, please!" His hat fell first, then his boot, then the soil swallowed his scream, and finally, horribly, the earth smoothed over as if nothing had ever happened. Silence. Dead, suffocating silence. I dropped to my knees, clawing at the fresh dirt, screaming his name until my throat bled. But there was nothing, no sign, no trace. The Crimson Gourd loomed above me, its skin pulsing with a sickening glow. Stronger now, fed, satisfied, awake. It wasn't until much later that the weight of what had happened hit me fully. Caleb wasn't just my rival. He was a husband, a father, a man with people who loved him. And I had watched him die. Or worse, watched him get taken. Let me ask you something, since you're still here listening. If you saw something like that, something impossible, violent, hungry, would you go to the police? Would you tell your family? Or would you hide it, terrified of being labeled insane. I made my choice, the wrong one. But you'll understand why soon enough. Caleb's disappearance was only the beginning, and Hollow Creek was about to learn what it costs when a town feeds the wrong kind of legend. Stay close. You're going to want to hear what came next. Prosperity doesn't come overnight. Every farmer in Iowa knows that. You work the land for months. You pray for decent rain. You lose sleep over early frost. And if you're lucky, you get a harvest that keeps the lights on. That's the natural order of things. That's the rhythm of the Midwest. But nothing about what happened on my farm after Caleb disappeared was natural. Nothing. The very next morning, the air felt different the moment I stepped outside. Warm, heavy, almost sweet, like the whole farm had been dipped in late summer honey. The fields shimmered with a richness I'd never seen in all my years working that soil. The corn stalks, which had been thin and thirsty from weeks of dry weather, now stood tall and fat, leaves snapping in the breeze like fresh sails. The bean rows were thick and perfect, not a single bite mark from pests. Even the damn soil looked healthier, darker, richer, almost black. And the fruit trees? God, those trees hadn't given a decent crop since my father was alive. But that morning, apples hung from every branch, round and glossy, like they'd been polished by hand. Sarah thought it was a blessing. She stood under the branches with a basket in her arms, smiling like it was a miracle. Maybe it was, just not the kind she hoped. The strangest part wasn't the abundance, it was the speed. Plants don't bounce back overnight, not even with perfect weather, but mine had. As if something below the surface had fed them from the inside out. As if one sacrifice had fertilized the whole damn farm. And you know what's terrible? Part of me felt relieved. Part of me felt proud. That's the kind of truth a man hates admitting, even to himself. When a crop is dying, you feel it in your bones. When it comes back to life, you feel that too. And the surge of hope is so intoxicating that it blinds you before you even realize it's happening. I kept telling myself the same lie over and over. Ethan, maybe things are finally turning around. But deep down, buried under guilt and denial, I knew exactly why the land had awakened. I knew what had fed it. And worse, I knew it wasn't finished. Every night that followed, the Crimson Gourd grew. Not gradually, not like a normal plant. It grew in sharp, hungry spurts, its veins glowing brighter, its vines crawling farther across the field, claiming more space, like a creature stretching into its true size. I could hear it sometimes, soft groans, cracking sounds, like bones adjusting under a heavy body. And the farm responded. More fruit, more crops, more life. A prosperity so unnatural that I stopped letting the neighbors visit, because anyone with half a brain would know something wasn't right. One evening, Sarah came into the kitchen laughing, her arms full of peaches. Peaches in Iowa that were the size of softballs. She set them on the table and said, "Ethan, I think this might be the best harvest we've ever had." I just nodded. Because what was I supposed to say? That's because something under our land ate a man alive? Here's the part that gets me, even now. There was a moment, a split second, when I thought, maybe I could live with it. Maybe one life, one terrible accident, was the price of saving the farm, saving our legacy, saving everything my family had built. But that kind of thinking is poison. It tastes like justification. It tastes like surrender. And once you swallow it, it spreads. Let me ask you something, since you're still here. If you were drowning, financially, emotionally, spiritually, and a lifeline appeared out of nowhere, would you grab it, even if you knew it came from someplace dark? Would you take the gift, even if you feared the giver? Because that's exactly how the Crimson Gourd traps you. Not with terror, not with force, with rewards. Rewards you can't afford to refuse. Within a week, buyers were calling me out of the blue. Restaurants wanted my produce. Canning companies wanted contracts. Folks in town whispered that the Merrills were back on their feet. And every time a new order came in, every time someone commented on the impossible bounty of my fields, I felt that pulse beneath the soil again, steady, patient, waiting. The farm wasn't thriving because of me. The farm was thriving because something in that field had eaten and wanted to eat again. And I know, it wanted me to feel grateful. Because gratitude makes obedience easier. If only I'd understood that sooner. Before the next sacrifice. Before things spiraled so far I couldn't tell where the farm ended and the monster began. But that's a story coming next, and trust me, it only gets darker from here. There's a moment, right before a tragedy, when the world goes unnaturally still. Birds quiet, wind settles, even your own heartbeat feels muffled, like your body is bracing for something your mind hasn't yet caught up to. Looking back, that was the feeling in the air the morning of the Hollow Creek Harvest Festival. It should have been a beautiful day, the kind of crisp October morning that smells like cinnamon, dry leaves, and wood smoke. But the moment my boots hit the dirt outside the house, there was a weight to the air, heavy, watchful, almost expectant. And deep beneath the soil of my field, I felt the faintest throb, a pulse, like something huge shifting in its sleep. I told myself it was my imagination. It always starts with lies we tell ourselves. The festival was the pride of our little Iowa town. Booths lined up along Main Street, kids running around with caramel apples, old farmers bragging about their yields. The kind of day that makes people forget their troubles. God knows I wanted to forget mine. And this year, everyone was buzzing about the Merrill produce booth. My apples, my beans, my corn, my peaches the size of softballs. Everything looked too perfect, too vibrant, too alive. Folks gushed about how my farm must have finally hit a good streak. They didn't know that streak was fed by something buried beneath my field, something that had already taken Caleb. But people don't see rot when you give them sweetness, not at first. Humans are simple that way. We believe anything that feels good. Even now, I don't blame them for loving the produce. I blame myself for letting them get close. Beside my booth, the town had set up a small attraction, Ethan Merrill's Miracle Gourd, a smaller offshoot I'd cut loose from the Crimson Gourd's main vines. Still huge, still unnaturally vibrant, but harmless looking. They put it on display like a carnival prize, families lining up just to stare at it. And I stood there smiling like a coward, like a man pretending he didn't feel something sinister humming beneath his feet. Then came the boy, the one who'd haunt me for the rest of my life. His name was Tommy Kessler, 10 years old, freckles, a mop of blonde hair, and a laugh that crackled like static. He'd been running around the festival all morning, a bundle of sugar rush and excitement. His parents stopped at my booth to buy peaches, and Tommy, curious as kids always are, wandered toward the display gourd. I saw him touch it. Just a tap, just curious fingers brushing the rind. But the moment he did, I felt a shiver ripple through the ground, like the earth itself was exhaling. I should have moved, should have shouted, should have grabbed him and carried him as far from my farm as possible. But fear is a chain, guilt is another, and worst of all, the gourd's influence is subtle, whispering, persuasive. You owe me, it seemed to murmur. You fed me once, feed me again. I froze, right there in front of everyone, in front of families buying pies and old men sipping cider. I froze like a man hypnotized. Tommy laughed, resting both palms on the giant gourd now, leaning in as if to inspect its shine. His father called his name, but Tommy didn't turn around. He just kept tracing the ridges with innocent curiosity. And then, so quickly the world couldn't process it, the ground beneath the gourd cracked. Just a thin line, like dry soil splitting, a puff of dust, a sound like a sigh. And the gourd sank. Not dramatically, not loudly, just slipped downward. Tommy's hands were still on it, and before anyone understood what was happening, he was pulled forward. He didn't scream. There wasn't time. He disappeared beneath the booth's platform, into the earth, swallowed whole in less than a second. The crowd burst into chaos, screams everywhere. Tommy's mother collapsed. Someone shouted that the ground had caved in. Another yelled for the sheriff. But no one but me, knew the truth. The gourd had reached out. The gourd had taken its next meal, and I had let it happen. The sheriff combed the area for hours. They tore apart the booth, dug beneath the stage, hauled soil by the truckload, but they found nothing. Not a shoe, not a shred of fabric. The earth had sealed itself clean. I stood there, numb, answering their questions with hollow words. No, I didn't see him fall. No, it must have been a sinkhole. No, Sheriff, nothing unusual about my crops this year. But inside, I was breaking. Do you know what real guilt feels like? Not the kind from mistakes, not the kind from lies, the kind that settles into your bones, the kind that makes you afraid of your own heartbeat because you know it's beating at someone else's expense. I remember going home that night, sitting at the edge of my field in the dark, staring at the monstrous gourd towering in the moonlight. It pulsed faintly, like it was satisfied, and something inside me snapped. Not anger, not horror, resolve. A grim, terrible resolve. If this creature fed on innocence, if it fed on the living, then it needed to be controlled, contained, hidden. Not for the world's sake, for Sarah's, for mine, for whoever else it might whisper to. But as you'll see in the next chapter, control is the most dangerous illusion of all. And the Crimson Gourd? It was already far beyond anyone's control, especially mine. If you're still listening, still following this descent, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss what comes next. Because from here on out, Hollow Creek's story only gets darker, sharper, and far more dangerous. It's strange how guilt can change the way a house sounds. That night, the Merrill farmhouse, my home of 22 years, felt like it was breathing. The floorboards creaked slower, heavier, as if they knew what I'd done. The wind pressed against the windows like fingers tapping for confession. And every light seemed too dim, too soft, like the house itself was turning its face away from me. That was the night Sarah found out. Or rather, the night she forced me to face what I'd become. The festival had ended in chaos, sirens, and grief. By the time we got home, her eyes were red, not from crying, but from trying not to. She'd seen me freeze when Tommy touched the gourd. She'd seen the way my face went pale, the way I stood there as if held in place by invisible hands. And Sarah, she was no fool. Not then, not ever. We walked into the kitchen, dropped our coats, and she turned to me with a look I'd never seen on her face before. A mix of terror, suspicion, and heartbreak. "Ethan," she whispered, "what did you do?" There are moments in a man's life where everything inside him wants to run, where the truth feels like a blade pressed to the throat, where every instinct screams, "Lie, protect yourself, hide." But guilt rots courage from the inside, and I was hollow enough that night for it to spill out. I didn't mean for it to happen. Caleb, the boy, I didn't. She staggered back like I'd slapped her. "My God," she breathed. "Ethan, no. Tell me you didn't hurt that child." "I didn't touch him," I said quickly. "But the gourd, Sarah, that thing in the field, it's not just a plant. It's alive. It's..." She slammed her hand on the table. "Ethan, stop! Don't do this to me! Don't stand there and tell me some vegetable ate a boy!" Her voice cracked, not with anger, with fear. And here's the thing I still think about. Fear makes people cruel, but love makes them desperate. In that moment, Sarah was both. She reached for me, gripping my arms as if she could shake the truth out of me. "Tell me you're lying. Tell me you're sick or confused or traumatized. Just don't tell me it's real." I wish I could have lied. I wish I had that mercy in me. Instead, I led her to the back porch, pointed toward the dark silhouette in the field, massive, pulsing faintly under the moonlight, like a heart beating in the dirt. "Look," I whispered, "tell me that's normal." Her breath hitched. She gripped the railing, knuckles white, and I could see the moment her world cracked in half. The part that loved her warred with the part that feared me, and fear won. "Ethan, we have to tell someone," she said, voice trembling. "The sheriff, the church, somebody. This thing, whatever it is, you can't keep hiding it. People are dying." "Sarah," I said, stepping forward,
If we tell anyone, they'll think I did it. They'll lock me away. They'll bulldoze the farm. And that thing. I don't care about the farm, she snapped. I care about you. I care about the children in this town. Do you understand what you're protecting? I did. Oh God, I did. And that's what made everything worse. She tried to leave. She grabbed her coat and headed for the door, saying she was going to get help, that she wouldn't stand by while something evil lived in our field. And I, terrified of losing her, terrified of what the gourd would do if she brought others, grabbed her arm. Not hard, not violently, just enough to stop her. But fear twists meaning. It changes touch into threat. She jerked away from me like I was a stranger.
Ethan, let go. That was the moment everything inside me shattered. Because she wasn't afraid of the gourd anymore. She was afraid of me. I stepped back, hands trembling, heart breaking in a way I hadn't known was possible. "Sarah," I whispered, "please don't go out there. Not tonight. It's hungry." She froze, just for a second, just long enough to hear the low groan roll across the field, the ground shifting, vines stretching. And for the first time, she believed. Her eyes lifted to mine, wide and wet. "Ethan, what have you done?" A question no man ever wants to hear from the woman he loves. Before I could answer, before I could beg or explain or fall to my knees and repent, the gourd let out another deep, resonant crack from the field, a sound like something waking. And that is where the real nightmare began. But that's a story for the next chapter. And if you're still with me, still walking through the dark with us, make sure you subscribe, because what happened after that night tore apart everything I thought I could protect. If the night of our argument cracked my world open, the night that followed shattered it entirely. And what's cruel is how it began. Quiet, almost peaceful, like the farm was holding its breath. You would never guess something evil was waiting beneath that soil, hungry for the last piece of my soul. But evil rarely announces itself. It waits, it watches, it chooses the moment when you're weakest, when you're begging the universe to give you one more chance. That night, I was on my knees, literally, at the edge of the field, praying to a God I hadn't spoken to in a long time. I prayed for forgiveness. I prayed for strength. I prayed for Sarah. But the ground doesn't care about prayers, and monsters don't bargain. I didn't realize she'd left the house right away. I thought she was still inside, packing, still angry, still scared. I didn't know she'd stepped outside until I heard her voice, small, trembling, float across the field. "Ethan?" I stood up so fast my knees popped. She was standing only 20 feet from the Crimson Gourd, her silhouette lit by the moon, hands shaking at her sides. She hadn't gone for help. She hadn't run away. She'd come out to face it, to see the truth for herself. God, if I had known, I would have dragged her inside even if she hated me forever. But she was already too close. The gourd was pulsing, slow, deep, rhythmic, a heartbeat. And Sarah, she was staring at it like someone staring down a wild animal, trying not to provoke it. "Ethan," she whispered without looking at me. "This thing, it's alive." I walked toward her, palms up, voice as gentle as I could manage. "Sarah, listen to me. Don't move. Don't step any closer." She shook her head slowly, as if refusing reality itself. All this time, it was real. The boy, Caleb, the harvest. I thought you were losing your mind, but this thing. "Sarah," I said again, louder this time, "come here, please. It's awake." And that's when the gourd exhaled. A long, low moan, like the earth dragging in a breath before speaking. The soil rippled under her feet. Her eyes snapped wide. "Ethan!" It happened fast and slow at the same time. The kind of moment trauma stretches out until it scars every second of your memory. Vines shot forward, not like plants, but like limbs, hungry, intentional, alive in a way that rewrote everything I thought I understood about nature. One wrapped around her ankle. She gasped, stumbled back, and the ground beneath her split open like a mouth. I ran, faster than I've ever moved in my life. I grabbed her arms, pulled with everything I had, digging my heels into the soil until it bled under me. "I won't let it take you," I screamed. "I swear to God I won't." Her fingers dug into my wrists, nails breaking the skin. I felt her trembling down to the bone. "Ethan, don't let go." I didn't intend to. I didn't even consider it. But the vine wrapped higher, coiling around her calf, her knee, her thigh, dragging her inch by inch toward the opening earth. The pull was stronger than anything human, stronger than anything natural. I felt her slipping, not from my grip, but from the world itself. "Ethan," she choked out, eyes filling with terror and love all at once. "You have to promise me. End this. Don't let it keep going." "I will," I sobbed. "Just stay with me. Please stay." The vines yanked hard. She screamed, a sound I didn't know her voice could make, one part terror, one part goodbye. Her hand slid down my arms, fingers scraping my palms, fingertips barely touching, then gone. She was swallowed in one brutal pull, dragged beneath the soil like she'd never existed. And the ground sealed over her, smooth, perfect, undisturbed, like the earth wanted to erase the evidence. I fell onto the dirt, pounding my fists into it until they bled, screaming her name over and over into the empty night. I wanted the monster to rise up and finish me too. I wanted to follow her. But the gourd didn't want me dead, not yet. It pulsed again, slow, satisfied, a monster's version of gratitude. That was the moment something inside me hardened, calcified. Grief didn't hollow me out, it forged me. I had been afraid, blind, obedient. But now it had taken the only thing that ever kept me human. And if you take a man's heart, you free his hands. I stood up. My voice was hoarse, broken, barely recognizable even to myself. "You want a caretaker?" I whispered to the gourd. "Fine, I'll stay." My hand pressed to the soil where she vanished, warm, alive. But I swear on Sarah's name, I'll kill you one day. That's where the next chapter begins, where grief becomes vengeance, and the monster learns what a desperate man is capable of. If you're still here, still following this descent, subscribe now so you don't miss what comes next. Because from here on, the story stops being about survival. It becomes about war. In the weeks after Sarah's death, the town tried to move on from the festival tragedy. People clung to normalcy the way drowning men cling to driftwood, desperate, shaking, pretending they weren't actually sinking. But I could feel it, a shift, a heaviness that settled over Hollow Creek like low fog. The kind that creeps in quietly until you realize visibility has dropped to zero. It began small, whispers, families packing up and leaving in the early hours, storefronts closing temporarily, church attendance dropping. Folks who'd lived in the same house for 40 years suddenly boarding up their windows and refusing to open the door. Hollow Creek wasn't dying overnight. It was being eaten from the inside, the same way the gourd ate everything it touched. At first, the sheriff tried to assure people. He ran meetings at the town hall, telling everyone that Tommy's disappearance was under active investigation. But every time he spoke, his eyes flicked toward me, toward my farm, toward the unspoken truth none of them dared acknowledge. And here's the thing no one wants to admit. Fear spreads faster than any rumor. And guilt, real guilt, has a way of turning a man into a walking plague. Even children stopped riding their bikes past my property. Parents hurried them along, refusing to look toward the sprawling shape growing out of my east field. It was bigger now, bigger than a barn, bigger than anything with the right to exist on this earth. And even from a distance, you could feel it. A hum in your teeth, a warmth that wasn't sunlight, a pull. Hollow Creek felt that pull too. One morning, I walked into town to pick up supplies, and every storefront window had a new sign: for sale, leased, or worst of all, abandoned. The diner where Sarah and I used to get pie on Fridays had its lights off. The grocery store shelves were half empty. Even the post office had reduced hours, which in a small town means someone's either dying or running. I overheard two women whispering near the hardware store. Ever since the festival, things don't feel right. It's that farm. Something's wrong there. Wrong? "Honey, that place is cursed." They didn't know I was standing 10 feet away. Or maybe they did and didn't care. When fear takes root, empathy becomes optional. The sheriff was the last one to hold out. He came to my house one night, his hat in his hands, his face worn down by too many sleepless nights. "Ethan," he said quietly, "the town's spooked. I can't stop people from leaving." "I know. And I can't stop what's happening out there either." He nodded toward the field, though we were inside and couldn't see it. "Something's wrong with this land. I'm aware. You planning on doing something about it?" I couldn't answer, because the truth was, I didn't know if I could fight it. Not yet. He sighed and stepped back onto the porch. "Folks are saying Hollow Creek won't last the winter. Too many leaving, too many scared." His voice softened. "Whatever you're mixed up in, it's killing this town." He left without another word. And he was right. Hollow Creek was unraveling. By November, only a handful of houses still had lights on at night. The school shut down early for the season. The weekly paper stopped printing. And Main Street, once full of chatter and pickup trucks and Sunday chatter, turned quiet enough that you could hear your own footsteps echo against the asphalt. Some nights, I'd stand at the edge of the field and look toward town, seeing nothing but darkness. The kind of darkness that feels final, like a closed casket. And behind me, the gourd grew, towering, pulsing, alive with stolen life. The monster fed on the town's fear, the same way it fed on blood. Every person who left weakened the fabric of the community, and Hollow Creek slowly collapsed like a barn with too many rotten beams. The worst part? There was one moment, one awful, shameful moment, when I realized the town's downfall meant fewer eyes watching me, fewer questions, fewer chances of someone else getting too close. I hated myself for thinking it, but grief changes a man. The collapse of Hollow Creek wasn't loud, it wasn't violent, it was silent, slow, a surrender. Like the whole town bowed its head to the gourd and whispered, "We can't fight you." But I wasn't done, not yet. And the thing in my field, the thing that had taken my wife, knew it. Because the night Hollow Creek truly died was the night I finally decided to fight back. And that's where the next chapter begins. People think old men forget things, that our minds soften, our memories get cloudy, and the years blur into each other like wet ink. Maybe that's true for some, but not for me. Not for a man who's outlived his wife, his friends, and his entire town. Not for someone who wakes up every morning knowing the thing that took everything from him is still out there, breathing, waiting, whispering beneath the soil. I'm past 100 now. My bones creak louder than the porch boards, and my hands shake too much to chop wood. Some days I forget what I walked into a room for. But I have never, not once, forgotten the sound of Sarah's scream as she disappeared beneath the earth. I have never forgotten the weight of Hollow Creek collapsing around me, house by house, heartbeat by heartbeat. And I have never forgotten the Crimson Gourd. It hasn't spoken to me in years, not directly, not with that voice like wind dragging through bare branches. but I still feel it, like a splinter under the skin that never works itself out. Sometimes, late at night, I hear the faintest rumble rolling through the ground, like a giant turning in its sleep, like hunger stretching its limbs. It's smaller now, shrunk back into something that looks harmless, almost pitiful. Folks who pass through say it looks like any old pumpkin past its prime, slumped and wrinkled, barely bigger than a doghouse. They laugh when I warn them. They call it the old man's ghost story, the ramblings of someone with too much time and too few visitors. Let them laugh. Let them believe what makes them comfortable. People always choose comfort over truth. But I know what waits under that field. I know what it can become, what it once became. The monster that swallowed men, women, and children without leaving a single bone behind. The creature that fed on fear, on blood, on secrets. The thing that killed my wife. The thing I failed to kill. When Hollow Creek died, I died with it. Not all at once, piece by piece. Like the town and I were tied to the same root system. And every life the gourd took, it stole a little more of me too. Some days I wonder why it didn't just finish me. Why it didn't drag me down the night Sarah vanished. Why it spared the one man who might have ended its reign for good. And the answer is simple, cruel, and perfectly clear after all these years. It needed me, not as a sacrifice, as a guardian, a caretaker, someone to keep people away from it long enough for it to survive. The gourd isn't stupid, it's cunning, patient. It used me the same way a hunter uses camouflage. My guilt turned into obedience, and my obedience turned into protection. By the time I realized it, Hollow Creek was already gone. So now I sit here, on this porch worn smooth by time, watching the horizon for headlights that never come. The fields around me grow wild, untended, reclaiming my land inch by inch. The farmhouse leans like an old drunk. The barn's roof collapsed last winter. But the gourd remains, unchanged, untouched, unkillable. And I am its last witness. Some nights, the loneliness creeps in like frost, and I wonder if I should have burned the whole place down years ago. But I tried. God knows I tried. Fire, blades, chemicals, nothing worked. The thing is older than me, older than this country, older than anything we understand. You don't kill something like that. You endure it, or you succumb to it. What frightens me now isn't the gourd itself. It's the thought of what happens when I'm gone, when there's no one left to stand between it and the world. When some traveler pulls off the highway, sees an old farm, and wanders inside out of curiosity. Because curiosity, that simple human flaw, is how it always begins. So if you're hearing this, if these words reach you somehow in the dark of your room or the quiet of your car, listen to me, not as a storyteller, not as a mad old farmer, but as a man whose entire life has been defined by one unforgivable mistake. Stay away from Hollow Creek. Don't follow the signs. Don't wander down the dirt road. Don't step into the field. And if you see a pumpkin, small, shriveled, harmless looking, don't touch it. Don't even get close enough to hear the soil shift. Because that's when it wakes. That's when it remembers. And that's when it starts all over again. If you've made it this far, thank you for listening. And if you want the truth, others are too afraid to speak, stay with me. This story might be ending, but the danger is just beginning.